Hello, welcome to the Chatbase live stream. Today we're going to talk about how to build the right AI-powered virtual agent for your contact center. So the past couple of years, we've done virtual agent analytics for over 500,000 virtual agents. And one pattern that we've seen is that a lot of these virtual agents are customer support ones. And we've also seen that these virtual agents really struggle to understand the customer because customers ask a myriad of questions and they ask them in all kinds of ways. And so the end result is the bot often, or the virtual agent, doesn't know what the customer wants and how to respond. And so we wanted to take that head on. So today I'm going to talk about this new Chatbase Enterprise Early Access program that helps with that. What we do is we take all the calls and live chats with your live agents, and we apply to that some of the best machine learning developed over many years at Google, used in Google Search and Assistant and Gmail in order to extract insights into what virtual agent to build. So as I go through the live chat, the live stream today, please post your questions, and then at the end I'll respond to questions. You can use that short link at the top in order to send questions. Okay, now let's go into the deck. So what we've found in talking to teams building digital agents is that often they do it in a very manual way. They do a brainstorm, they go into a room with the right experts from the team, and maybe sometimes they bring in consultants from the outside, and they try to map out the conversations. They try to figure out what's the top use case that we should build into our virtual agent, and then what is a typical flow of the conversation. So the downside to that kind of approach is that it can miss a lot of edge cases. So if the use case is about changing maybe your bill due date, maybe you forgot to include an answer to the question of what's the latest date possible. Or maybe if someone asks, does it cost money to change the bill due date, your agent doesn't know how to respond. There's lots and lots of these turns of the conversation that you just can't think of in a brainstorm. Also, when you're doing a brainstorm, you might miss trends in your contact center. So for example, there's seasonality that needs to be taken into consideration. There's new products that come out, and are those handled properly by your virtual agent? And finally, the issue with this brainstorm process is that it's very slow. It can take months and months to figure out some of the more complex use cases, and it's not a good use of time. So really, the challenge is when building a contact center virtual agent is that it's a black box, knowing what are customers calling about the most. How are they phrasing the questions? It could be thousands of ways that they ask a given question. And then what are good responses from agents based on data? So all that is a real challenge. And so that's where Chatbase comes in with our new early access program, and we really open up that black box. So in this case, there's maybe a phone call by a customer to an agent about billing. They're asking to change their bill due date. And what Chatbase would do is tag the different parts of the conversation. It starts with the customer asking to change the date, but then there's the steps for providing the new date. So all that can be found in the data across all your transcripts. And so we would label this whole call at the high level, we call it driver. It's about billing. And then at the intent level, it's about changing the bill due date. And per node, per step of the conversation, we show you all the thousands of ways that people might have phrased that step of the conversation. And so when the agent asks, what's the new date for your bill? The response, and this is actually real data we've seen from customers, The response might be between the 3rd and 5th, or mid-month on a Friday. So most brainstorming activities would not expose those kind of responses to this question of what date. But if you're doing a data-driven approach to building your virtual agent, then you can expose these kind of edge cases. So it's really powerful to have day one, when you launch your virtual agent, all this flexibility around how people phrase questions handled. Okay, so the rest of this presentation, we're going to talk about the 3 steps for building a data-driven virtual agent. So it starts with the discovery part, where you're discovering in the live calls and chats what to build and how to build. And then there's the deployment to your virtual agent. And then finally, there's optimization. Once it's out there in the wild, you want to be improving it and continuing to make the experience better. So with regards to discovery, it starts with figuring out at the highest level, what we call the driver level, what your calls or live chats are about. And so here's where we use clustering or unsupervised machine learning to figure out what are the biggest clusters. And you can see here that billing is a big one, and returns and orders, but tech support and payment, they're smaller drivers. And so that gives you a sense of like what's important or what's common. Well, what's common in when people call in. And then the next step is to go, let's say, into billing, because it's a bigger driver, and see what are the clusters there. So within billing, we see that asking to set the new bill due date is a larger cluster, and then asking for a discount on the bill is a smaller cluster. And so there again, you get a sense for what's common and important to build out first into your virtual agent. As the next step, we use supervised machine learning or labeling to tighten up some of the circles or clusters, and also to combine some. But really, it all starts with this clustering kind of analysis. The next step, after you decide on an intent that you want to build out, so we're going to go into the set due date one, because it seems common, is to create what we call an intent flow. So you want to discover what are all those paths that users take for this specific use case, set due date. And there's the obvious paths that you probably would have thought of, and then there's the unexpected paths. But everything is there to be analyzed. And compared to the normal experience of building virtual agents, where you're starting with a blank canvas and just trying to build based on what you can think of, the flow, here you're starting from the actual conversations and then trimming parts of the conversation that maybe don't make sense for your virtual agent, or maybe are not common enough to build into your virtual agent. So this is really powerful, and behind each node in such a flow are the hundreds or thousands of variations or training data. Same thing, the ways of saying, people phrase that step in the conversation. So then after this discovery period, you have the building blocks for your virtual agent. So you can deploy that to production, to your virtual agent, and have it be used in the wild, in production, and out of the gate, you have a very powerful virtual agent. And then the final step is to optimize. And so using Chatbase analytics, you can see in the wild what didn't go well. So, building virtual agents in this way still can be optimized. It doesn't capture all the not handled experiences where your bot's not sure what to do. And so there you can use analytics for that. So here you can see a few phrases that the virtual agent didn't catch related to setting a new build date. So my build timing won't work, or get paid on seconds, so need new date. Your virtual agent somehow didn't catch those as change or bill due date. And so here we again can use machine learning to suggest what is the intent that is likely to match these not handled experiences. We build a custom ML model for your virtual agent. So it's using past labeled data per intent in order to suggest what might be the right intent for the not handled experiences. Long story short, we've seen this save a lot of time for enterprises, as otherwise you'd have to do this in a manual way. The final step to optimize is to really check your funnel per intent. Make sure that people are getting through the steps in that intent. So in this case, you can see that the change bill due date has a drop off, and only a subset get to the final confirmed step. And here's where you can do other kinds of optimizations around the number of steps it takes to complete, the language used. You can experiment with that to make sure that the drop-off is not as steep. Here also you can bring up transcripts per step of the funnel to see why people might have dropped off at different steps. So the impact of building virtual agents in this data-driven way is that it really can save you a ton of time on the building side. We were able in a couple hours to create a flow that would have taken weeks to create otherwise. And so that's pretty incredible that you can speed up the bot building. Also, customers, once you have a very flexible and smart virtual agent, can call in and have a good customer experience and not be frustrated by a virtual agent that doesn't quite understand them. And then finally, obviously, there's the opportunity to reduce operational costs through this kind of automation. So one senior exec of a Fortune 100 company that we've done this kind of analysis for said that this way of building bots is like moving at 200 miles per hour compared to like 10 to 20 miles per hour with their existing way of building bots. And so really it's like going from like a horse and carriage to like a well-tuned race car. So that's pretty incredible. At this point, we're gonna open this up for questions. And so feel free to send some if you haven't yet. Okay. So one question is, will this be useful in non-customer support experiences, this kind of technology? So, so we think that this approach can be generalized. It can be used for any type of virtual agent. We're initially focused on customer support ones, but we think in the future marketing bots and other kind of bots could also benefit. It works the best when you have a large volume of existing conversations with human agents that you can analyze. And so wherever that's the case, this kind of approach will work well. And okay, so there's a question about whether how can you be accepted to the early access program? So we're looking for companies that have an acute issue with cost around customer support, that have a lot of data that we can analyze, because we think that this works the best when there's a lot of data to analyze. And so we're currently focused on the higher end of the market in the contact center space, meaning the largest companies. But we are planning on, over time, building tools and making it available for medium to smaller companies. And with that, I thank you today for tuning in. and looking forward to the next one. Thank you.